that was a pretty foundational experience in my life, of course. And we created the foundation, and it stands for character, courage, commitment. And then the fourth C is kind of, what do you foresee type of thing. So it's kind of a cool slogan for our foundation for sure.
Welcome back to the Days End Podcast. We have Jacob Spady here on the podcast talking about all things finances, what he's up to, as well as some family foundations and the new business that he has started. Guys, I'm excited for this one. Welcome, Jacob Spady, to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really interested, Jacob, too, because you kind of shared some interesting information about your foundation, 4C Foundation, as well as your current analytic company and consulting company. I want to know where this started, where the idea started from, and we can start at the beginning there and kind of work our way through what you guys are doing currently. And you can even dive into, if you care to, also your current employer, and we can just kind of give our audience a complete rundown of where you started.
Yeah, sure. I guess kind of from a professional standpoint, I got pretty interested in sort of the finance world at a pretty young age. I was kind of fortunate to, my dad is kind of a little bit of a finance guy too, and so growing up I would just see him, I don't know, doing research into stocks, stock prices or anything like that, and so kind of got really interested in sort of high level finance just at in high school, things like that. And so that's kind of where a foundation started, just in my interest in the financial world. And funnily enough, I started in college as a pre-med major, just because some of the background, which I'll get into later with some of my family health history, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but then I realized that I didn't have the stomach for that. So ended up going into just international business. Got to travel, went on a couple of mission trips overseas, and did some traveling. So I really just enjoyed the international experience and kind of experiencing different cultures and things like that. And so kind of paired that with business, which, like I said, was a little bit of an interest of mine. And about halfway through, when it was a little too late to switch to finance major or anything like that, I decided that finance was the route that I wanted to go. And so kind of geared some classes and experience towards that. Did a couple internships at local banks, things like that. And so, so decided to do finance about halfway through. And then I was also playing football at the time, just at a small D2 college, Southern Nazarene University here in Oklahoma. And so ended up getting my master's while I was finishing that up, and then started out my career sort of in an operations consultant and analytics role for a few years. We did. I won't get to, these are a little bit boring words for some people, but corporate governance and proxy vote solutions. Proxy vote solutions. So just won't get into that just because it's not really necessarily relevant anymore. But it was interesting, kind of laid a foundation from a technical standpoint, and then moved into more FP&A, which is where I am today. So just kind of financial and analytics and things like that. And so now go ahead.
Curious, before we get too far, I'm actually interested. I heard something you said earlier. You said you did some international travel on missions. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So I did a mission trip where we it was one trip. So we did some other local mission trips just with my church growing up. My faith was kind of a pretty important foundation of this too, that I was going to talk about as we kind of go. And so we did basketball camps in Eastern Europe for some local kids, and that was really awesome. And we got to kind of share with them a little bit while we were over there, and put on some basketball camps and things like that. And so
that's awesome.
That was an amazing experience for sure, and I'd love to go back for sure.
Yeah, I'm always interested in that. Back in 2017, precursor to my wife and I getting married. We ended up going to a missions trip as well, or on a missions trip to San Salvador, and we were actually planting a water well in a community for school. And so anytime I hear that word, I'm attached to that. I'd love to hear the background for it. I am actually really excited to hear that you're a man of faith and how that's going to kind of continue into or segue into this conversation. That's really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool.
So you've had a pretty diverse kind of background in terms of progressing to where you are today. It sounds like from having ideas of what you wanted to do to naturally going towards something that ran in the family with analytics and/or finance, and so I know that you mentioned that 4C Analytics and Consulting was inspired by your work in the fractional CFO space and the 4C Foundation. Can you share some more about how the foundation's mission influenced the vision for your consulting business?
Yeah. So what the 4C stand for, and when my family and I created the foundation in honor of my little brother who passed away. He passed away from a rare form of brain cancer called DIPG, and it has a kind of a 0% survival rate among diagnoses. So that was a pretty kind of foundational experience in my life, of course, and so anyways, we created the foundation, and it stands for character, courage, commitment, and then the fourth C is kind of what do you foresee type of thing. So
okay,
yeah, and so it's kind of a cool slogan for our foundation for sure, and I can kind of get more on that, but also it just I think it's very applicable to the financial world because a lot of times finance is such a sensitive subject, and people are naturally, of course, even with personal finances, a little bit more apprehensive to trust someone with decision making and things like that. And so I just thought it was perfect because I want to approach both my work with my full-time role and as I kind of develop my business from a position of having high character, and then obviously being committed to my clients, and then having the courage to kind of overcome some challenges that comes with talking about finances to some people who might be a little bit more sensitive about it. And then of course the 4C kind of work because forecasting and all that fun stuff that comes with it. But so that's kind of where we got to it. And like I said, my experience with my brother was a pretty pivotal thing. And then the 4C Foundation is something that's really important to me. Unfortunately, we've kind of not been able to do as much. We still volunteer at some different events each throughout the year that other foundations or organizations have put on to raise money for childhood cancer research. But it's on my list to one day kind of pair up when I have some more time on my hands as well to kind of get some growth going back with the 4C Foundation too. So we get to do.
Yeah, and first and foremost, condolences. I'm not sure how long it's been since that loss, but still, nevertheless. And hopefully this is a great opportunity for platforming what sounds like an incredible foundation for what is a serious situation within not just the United States of America, but just the world in general. I know quite a few that have been affected by cancer in different various ways, and one of our early guests for season 2 is dealing with that currently on a different scale. And so we here, especially at the Days End Podcast, have a heart for that, and one of our main goals is for our guests, whether that is just from a business standpoint, wanting to give insights to the next people coming up, or from a personal level, wanting to really connect to our audience and some of the things, the challenges that they're dealing with. So I'm looking forward to this and the opportunity to kind of shed some light on this. And so
absolutely.
What is for 4C Analytics specifically? What is the process of what you do? It sounds very intricate. It sounds like a market that's probably a bit above my head in terms of probably some of the things that you guys do on a regular basis. What does that look like for someone who doesn't know analytics? You're talking about those who might be apprehensive about communicating about their finances or letting somebody else make decision making when it evolves around or revolves around their finances. How do you navigate that? Now that you explain the name, what's the process for 4C when they approach someone?
Yeah, and it's kind of different based on the client and the project, I would say. One reason I didn't necessarily hone in on in the way I named it was just analytics and consulting. I wanted to be pretty broad because I kind of want to encompass anything from fractional CFO work to like some work I've done just building out, whether it's pricing models or accounting type work, things like that. And so kind of starting with, okay, what is the project that we're dealing with is the first thing. And then a lot of it is also understanding the owner that you're working with too, because it's going to be, like I mentioned before, combining finances with someone who owns a business. That business is their baby, so to speak, and so it's going to be very personal to them. And so I think approaching it with first understanding that it's very personal, and that I want to treat it that way myself. So I want to treat it as kind of my personal business too.
Which is important.
So kind of going in with that mindset, and then as far as the process goes, it depends on the sort of work that I'm doing. A lot of it is defining, okay, what's your end goal with this? What are you looking to achieve with either this model or analytical tool or dashboard, whatever it might be, or are you looking for kind of more long-term, strategy consulting, more CFO type work that I do at my full-time job? And so kind of figuring out guidelines and goals is sort of how I would say we get started. There's kind of a lot to go into detail on depending on what you want to do. But
I'd hate for proprietary information to be shared, obviously.
Good.
I am interested though too, since we're on this subject. You talk about fractional. Am I saying that right? Fractional CFO.
Yeah, fractional CFO.
I'm curious for you to kind of expound into what that is specifically. That's the first time for me hearing about it. But then also I'm interested because, obviously with myself being with a company that I've been with for quite a few years now, I still have a 9-to-5. I'm obviously in the management sector of it, and so that makes it difficult for me to get back here and do the things on my personal time, obviously from an entrepreneurial perspective, with very limited time, which is the purpose of the Days End podcast, trying to absorb as much as possible from a bunch of different people of different backgrounds. And so that being said, I'm interested, and I think our listeners are going to be interested because we're trying to figure out how those two worlds collide and how you make it on the other side of that successfully, because sometimes your company doesn't want you to do things personally. And I read something that I think you shared with us, which is and I latch onto, which is using my time at my current employer to strengthen my time afterwards in my personal ventures, and vice versa, coming back and using what I learn outside of work to come back and make myself better in a place of employment. And so if you don't mind, that was kind of a long-winded question, but we can start with CFO or fractional CFO and kind of break that down for us.
Sure. Yeah, to be honest with you, I've been in the fractional CFO space for, I guess, a year and a month now. And before that, I didn't know it really existed either. And it's kind of funny because I've worked in different industries for every position. I've worked, I mentioned the corporate governance, and then I went into utilities and energy cost in financial services, and then I worked for healthcare company too. And so there were many different industries, and I loved them all. I mean, I liked working in them all. And so when I started working part-time for my current full-time company and was exposed to the fractional CFO world, and I immediately knew, okay, this is where I want to spend the rest of my career. And there's kind of a couple reasons for that. I think one, it sort of feels like you have multiple different jobs just because you work with so many different industries, and there's some pros and cons to that for sure. But the pros to me are big time in that there's just so much variety. Never get really necessarily stale. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. So, and then there's a cycle, right? And so when our clients get big enough, maybe they decide to hire a CFO full time, and so then, okay, well, let's get another client in here from a different industry, or maybe we have a couple industries that we're a little bit more niche in, some e-commerce mainly, but for the most part, I have e-commerce, some SaaS, software as a service companies, kind of some different ranges of clients. And so the variety is very interesting to me, and the fractional CFO world kind of exists for all the sort of executive positions too. So CFO, CEO, and kind of all the executive suite positions. So so it was just kind of a sweet spot for me was finding something that combined my interest in finance and the technical skills to build the tools that we needed, and then also my personality is kind of like I like to talk to people, and I like to be in front of people, but maybe not all the time. And so so it's kind of a good spot for that. Like I can kind of sit back and build some cool models and build some cool tools, but have a few meetings a week with clients where I get to talk face to face and see what kind of issues they're facing and address them with that. So so just all around a really, really big sweet spot for me.
That's awesome. I know you mentioned like e-commerce, which is like, I mean, a major push right now. I mean, there's so many brands and new brands coming up in the e-commerce space. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Are you guys across the board? So whether that's from your full-time or even into your new business venture, are you seeing what industry are you seeing kind of that uptick in?
Oh man, it's kind of interesting. So e-commerce kind of hit a boom during COVID, just because everyone was at home, online shopping. And so it's been interesting to see. Obviously, we're going to have some big increases around that time. And so then it's kind of like, okay, resetting the standard, right? So we kind of got to set expectations moving forward, especially in e-commerce about how we adapt to kind of the post. I don't know if you want to call it the e-commerce boom or something like that. It's not an official term, but so it's definitely been interesting. I guess that's not really an uptick; it's more of a downtick. But specifically with e-commerce, that's one trend that we're addressing. And then it's also with e-commerce, a big thing is figuring out how to do some analytics and things behind marketing and ad spend, and how to best allocate, okay, where are we going to put our advertising dollars, and things like that. And then a lot of times too, people get stuck on just cutting costs, and you hear a lot cutting costs. But one thing, and this is something that the guy I'm working for mentioned quite a bit, is that it's easier to cut costs than it is to drive revenue. So we want to focus a lot of our time on figuring out ways to drive revenue and to spend effectively on things that are going to help us drive revenue. And so that's
And I
a
think
little
that's
bit
an
of a
important
tangent.
distinction, right? That's a
Yeah,
very important distinction. Like, there's so many that want to cut costs, right? Because at the end of the day,
hmm
like, what's a business, right? Can control costs, control the controllables, increase revenue,
exactly.
invest the margin,
hmm
right? And so, how do you do that effectively across the board when you have a very, especially from an e-commerce perspective, and you're a brand, and you have you have a capex of inventory,
Yeah.
right? And you're going,
Oh
oh
yeah.
crap, like what am I doing, right? I have all this inventory, like, and little to no money on an ad spend, and you kind of like this like teeter totter. And
Yeah.
I mean, having somebody like you on board is like probably a godsend to a lot of people, just because it's
Well, I hope
like,
so.
where do I, like, how do I spend most, right? And I've seen this across multiple brands, and I'm acquainted with a few others as well,
Mhm.
and I listen to it all the time on LinkedIn, and so like the one thing that I've seen as well is really what you're saying, right? There's an e-commerce boom, right? The ones that kind of blew up over COVID have kind of trickled down, and then
Mhm.
the strong ones survived,
Yep.
right? Or they were a one product company, they drove it to the ground, and then they exited, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever they may have done. So I think that's really cool. So from your view between e-commerce, energy, and and the other industries that you're in,
Yeah.
where are you seeing common challenges between all these industries with what they're needing to do from a fractional CFO perspective, or well, I guess, yeah, what challenges are you seeing across the board that you're going, okay, like this is becoming a theme?
Yeah. Um, so I don't know if there's necessarily a common industry theme per
Mm-hmm.
se. A lot of times when you're in the fractional CFO, I guess arrangement, I would say, you're working with um, some very visionary type people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people who've had this amazing vision, who want to develop this amazing product or service, and they're kind of go go go, and they just have all kind of ideas and ideas, and so one of the challenges from a CFO perspective, especially when you're on a fractional basis, is to kind of figure out how to encourage that, but then also be like, okay, hey, this is kind of what you don't want to be necessarily married to just numbers, but okay, but this is kind of what the numbers are saying. Here's how we can approach this from a strategic perspective, and things like that. So sort of pairing up the visionary CFOs and developers, and it ranges. Not everyone is like that. Some
Yeah.
may have started out kind of more in an analytical type space. Um, but so figuring out how to kind of pair those has been a challenge for sure. And then also just like I mentioned before, it's such a personal thing to them when they've created this business that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can be really hard to deliver some bad news. And so,
Yep.
frankly, most small businesses well, really a lot of small businesses don't make it, right? And so, unfortunately, and so um, that's why we're here, and we try to make that not happen as much as possible. And so, um, not being scared to deliver bad news and to deliver things they might not like to hear is really important too. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so, but kind of approaching that with in a constructive way and say, hey, this is how we can do better from it.
Yeah, that's really good. I want to touch on one piece you're just talking about,
Yeah,
right? The small business, right? Because a lot of small business owners, they're gonna see CFO, they're gonna go, all right,
yeah,
pricing. That's not even.
yeah,
I have zero money for a CFO, right? I'm
yeah.
the CFO, I'm the marketer, I'm the owner, I'm the everything, right? I'm the
Mhm.
17 hats guy. Is fractional CFO a good model for smaller businesses that really need that financial piece to their business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that you didn't know you need until you have it, kind of
Mm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think businesses from pre-revenue all the way to um, you know a few $1 million businesses, and
Mm.
probably even a little bit higher, um,
Yeah.
could really benefit from a fractional arrangement. It's really geared towards people um, are growing or want to grow and don't have maybe don't have the resources or don't need to have the resources yet for a full-time CFO arrangement. And so, I'm not gonna, and it's really more affordable than probably people think when they hear CFO.
Right.
So it's just because of the arrangement and a lot of firms and fractional CFO firms, the way they're set up, they have multiple clients, so they can afford to kind of work with people on how much it costs, and it's obviously way cheaper than a CFO would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I love what you said, because I think it's a great way for small businesses to be able to have that financial piece to their business, but not have to not to shell out $180,000 to $125,000.
Exactly.
For a CFO to come on board.
Yep.
And
Is that average?
Yeah, it's about 180, 225.
Yeah, it's not more for a more seasoned.
Yeah, if you get somebody
on it,
seasoned, Fortune 500, they're probably like sitting around 600,000 to 800,000 with like a $1.5 million bonus package.
Yeah, it's
easily.
It's pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy.
Crazy money.
How do you, with a lot of our listeners, right, and a lot of our audience is very much kind of where you are, right? They're either business owners already, or they're making that transition. What are some of these? Have you faced current challenges, or what are the challenges that you foresee or already have taken? What that transition looks like from a 9 to 5 into like small business ownership?
Yeah. First off, I've learned to be a morning person.
Right.
So and I enjoy my mornings. I've got a couple kids and a wife too, so it's kind of waking up and starting the day and some quiet time and things like that, and then spending 2 or 3 hours on my business, and then fortunately I'm in a remote role for my full-time job, so kind of cuts the commute. Not to say that people could definitely make it work if they do have a commute, but pretty fortunate to cut that time out of my day and be able to spend that doing some business development and some work. So my mornings will typically be structured to do some deep type work, and then maybe around lunchtime or things like that, do some more, and then fit in some business development and sales type stuff in there. But
that's awesome.
It's been a little bit of a challenge, but I'm fortunate to have some flexibility, and then my wife is very understanding too, so that helps. But
that helps a lot, right?
Yeah, that's huge. That is huge, especially when you're navigating the troublesome waters of starting any type of business at all. Family, close family, specifically relational spouses, are key to that company's success in a major role. So I'm curious, I would imagine that this market, based upon what you guys just talked about in terms of numbers, sounds like a very attractive position to be in terms of fractional CFO and analytics and that sort of thing, in terms of wanting to go down that path for a career purpose. And so I would imagine it's pretty competitive, pretty multifaceted and saturated by other maybe agencies of that nature and that sort of thing. And so I'm curious what sets 4C, other than the characteristics of the fabric of the name itself. Do you feel like that's a testament to you personally and your interaction with your clients and that sort of thing? Maybe your knowledge, maybe your hungriness for learning and growing and applying and that sort of thing. What do you think makes 4C stand out specifically within this industry?
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I think one big thing too, and I mentioned it a couple of times, is my approach is that I kind of want to make it personal to myself too. And so I'm not really looking at it as, okay, this is how I'm going to make money, right? No, this is, and provide for my family. This is, I want to help you grow your business kind of alongside. Um, and so I think that approach, and I mentioned my full-time role is we've kind of turned into almost like an incubator for small businesses as opposed to just their CFO. And I really love that because we can kind of help build up businesses from a business strategy and really from a financial standpoint. And so I think that's a little bit of a differentiator too. I'm not going to come in and just say, okay, here's your P&L for the month and here's the results from it. This is what I think you should do from it. I really kind of want to help think about, okay, business strategy from the ground up. Where are we missing? What can we do better, both short term and long term? And so I think taking that really personal and sort of incubator / growth mindset is maybe a little bit of a differentiator. And then also, I think sort of my having a background in multiple different industries kind of sets me up to be attractive to a wider range of potential clients too, and so that those are a couple of things that I think are big. And like I said, I just want to bring a sense of character and a sense of trust,
integrity almost.
Integrity and trust to financial data and information, just because there's that's definitely a big pain point for some owners and things like that. But
yeah, I could imagine, right? Especially trust. Trust is like a big proponent, and I think you're right on spot, right? I think making it personal also creates trust as a byproduct.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I think we've kind of seen a shift. You talk about, the pandemic and some of the things that arose from that. I think we've kind of seen a shift where, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost feels this way when you get on the internet and you just kind of shop industries and news and what's happening around the world and that sort of thing. It feels like I grew up in the 90s, I'm a 90s, early 90s baby. And so for me personally, things were very simple then. It just felt like a firm handshake. There was trust, like you're talking about. There was trust, integrity, communication. It seems like we entered into the early 2000s. Technology started to really develop, that sort of thing. People started to realize that, hey, I have things I want to talk about, different things I want to do that maybe they wouldn't have done before because of the alignment of their family and that track record and that sort of thing. And so everybody really started to individualize themselves versus coming together, it felt like, or it feels like. But now, I don't know if you guys are feeling this too, even you, Michael. Now it feels like we're getting back around to that point where people really want to interact with each other, and they really want trust, and they really want integrity, character, like 4C. And so I don't know if I would generate that as a question, but I don't know if you've noticed that within that space that you're in, and maybe that's a testament to the growth that you're seeing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it's and it's a little bit more difficult in a remote world, but I think it's you're definitely seeing that shift a little bit, and I mean, I think it's a good thing for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a massive thing, right? I mean, I think people are actually hungry for authenticity, right? People are hungry for that. Like, okay, I don't want the social media facade anymore. I want to know, like, who are you? Like, I want it's almost as if like back to that, like, neighborly, like people wanting to be neighborly, and that's kind of how I perceive it. Is people wanting to be really neighborly with people around them, even online now as well, right? There's
certainly.
I think I see more support online today than we did in the last 2 years, right? I mean, there was so much hate, there was so much trolls, they're still out there, and maybe I'm just not on that side of TikTok, maybe I'm not on that side of anything, but I just feel like it's completely different now, and I that type of behavior and that type of mindset is very much prominent in the business world,
Yeah.
right?
It is.
I mean, there are so many people. I mean, there's billion-dollar organizations going to small mom and pop type shops
Mhm.
to get that personal service now,
Yeah.
where before it was like you're a risk, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't think you have the capacity to handle the work that we could give you,
Mhm.
right? But now it's going, okay, hey, like we're going to offload this over here because they want that personalized services,
Yeah.
right? And so like I've seen big businesses turn small and mom and pop shops into big businesses,
Yeah. Yeah.
just by doing that alone. So I think
Uh-huh.
like where you're at in this small business and just this like you're almost I love the word that you're using is incubator, right? That's the
Mhm.
first I keep playing that in my mind because when I initially think incubator, I'm thinking, oh, YC,
Yeah. Yeah.
Y Combinator or some other like
Yeah, for sure.
some other type of like incubator or
Yeah.
what's the other one, I can't remember. It's up in New York, Flatiron.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
it's always
Yeah.
like that's what I think of like incubators. Like, okay, you're gonna go in here, they're gonna help you build up your business, and then you're gonna have your chance to like look at a pitch to a VC, and then
Yeah,
hopefully get an
exactly.
investment
Yeah.
after that, right? But I like how you're describing what
Yeah.
you're doing is because you're giving that personalized service to where you're going, hey, like yes, we're fractional CFO services. Yes, we're analytics. Yes, we're consulting. Great. Like from a service perspective, cool. There's a dime a dozen.
Mhm.
But we're bringing you into this world of, hey, like we understand not only cross industry, but we also
Mhm.
understand what it takes to help you grow businesses, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not just focused on what you can save, we're focused on what you can earn.
Yeah.
Right. And then that's the big part, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to have top line revenue to have bottom line revenue. Right. And so how can we grow top line? How can we grow bottom line and then be able to help invest in the middle? And so
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing way to put it. And I don't think I've ever like actually put two and two together to go, okay, like that's like an incubation of business.
Yeah.
It really is,
It is. Yeah.
right? It's exactly what's happening, right?
Yeah.
You're giving that same advisory level service, and that's super freaking cool, man. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you kind of touched on it. And the small business side is, I mean, I grew up in a really small town. I think my
Mm.
graduating class had like 27 people
Whoa.
in it. And so, I mean, small businesses, were the backbone of the town. And so, just being able to provide services to small businesses that may not
Hmm.
have had access to this CFO world before is a pretty incredible opportunity. So, um, kind
That's
of to your point, but yeah. So,
yeah, that's really cool.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I've been a part of. I come from the oil field. I feel like
Oh yeah,
I feel like I mention this every single podcast, but it's just such a pivotal part of my
Yeah.
makeup in my career. A lot of or not expertise, but a lot of information obtained from my time out there.
Hmm.
And a common denominator, and this is going to link into a question I have for you that kind of ties back to what Michael was asking you. Common denominator out there in the oil field was how fast can I grow? And then on the flip side of that, the common denominator after a while was, oh no, I grew too fast. Right? Because you start to hit those pain
yeah,
points. And I'm curious, based upon what Michael's saying, the size of 4C right now and the great things that it's doing, the cool things that it's doing. Is there, Michael had asked if there was a common challenge across the industries, but have you noticed a common pain point for customers and companies specifically? I know there's a lot of different industries, but maybe something that would help one of our listeners that's coming into various different industries that might be a foreshadowing, right, of some pain points that
yeah,
that they could embrace and give them a little bit of a heads up.
yeah. Yeah, I would say a couple, and I kind of touched on it. The whole focusing too much on cutting costs opposed to
Yeah,
driving
right.
revenue is a pretty common one. Um, and then I don't. I would almost say like the personal side of it is also a little bit of a pain point. Just having to to deliver guidelines and, operating procedures and putting structure to an owner who has just kind of, flown it himself or herself for a while. And so that can be kind of a pain point, dialing in some structure and some procedures, and that's kind of needed to operate and scale, because like you said, if you grow too fast, or if you're a growing business, one day you might not have structure in place, and you might not have kind of a foundation set, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're too big to support the what you've kind of built. And so I think those are kind of vague pain points a little bit, I guess, but just to kind of relate it across all the industries, those are some pretty common ones, and figuring out ways to drive revenue itself can be a pain point for sure. But that's why you hire a CFO or a financial team to kind of help figure that out. Yeah.
And that's a good kind of way to put it. I've always looked at the best way to scale and how you scale from a one-man shop to a four-man shop, right? It's processes and procedures and SOPs, right? And how do you scale from a four-man shop to a 20-man shop is by perfecting those and having repeatable processes and repeatable products. And that's how you're able to scale multiple businesses or a business or whatever you're trying to do. And so I think that's extremely important, not only for the listeners, right? But it's extremely important, something just to have in the back of your head is going, okay, like if it's taking me more than 3 steps to do this, I should write this as a process. Right. If this is something that I'm doing on a daily basis, it needs to be an SOP. Right. It needs to be an SOP. Or if I'm trying to grow from like 1 person to 4 persons, right? How would I teach this to somebody, right? And then write that down, and that becomes training material, right? And then that's how you just compound that type of documentation to where you can go, okay, hey, boom, day 1, you need to do this, this, and this. Day 2, this, and this. And if you do it as you go, super easy, right? It's solid. But do you? No.
I mean, SOPs and things like that are kind of the grunt work that you kind of have to force yourself to do sometimes. But like you said, it's so valuable. I mean, you need to do it. So
it's the stuff that you don't want to do, right?
Exactly,
and it was funny because I was before you had come on into the into the waiting room, I was thinking of things like how I'm going to say like the intro and stuff like that, and like I was just ad hocing like random stuff in my head, and I was like, "Welcome, Jacob Spady. He does the stuff that nobody wants to do, finances." It's like there's so much crap in business that nobody wants to do, and it's funny that you just said that we're talking about this, because I just had a podcast yesterday. Tuesday, and that was a big thing that we're talking about, right? Is doing the things that you don't want to do. Everybody wants to be the practitioner, right? Everybody wants to be the practitioner. Nobody wants to actually help build the business. And in her case, she was able to be the practitioner while she partnered with someone that was the business mind, right? And so they just meshed really well together. And then we really talked about staying in your own lanes. Like, it was a really awesome just podcast talking about the growth of a business and how you scale in a meaningful way. And I think that's really important, how what you're doing right now, because I have a lot of people, right? A lot of people just want to dive in, quit their job, and say, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do," right? But there is absolutely like no shame in like going, okay, like I'm going to do this until it covers my expenses, and then going off and doing something that I want to do, right? And I think society and or entrepreneurial culture has completely wrecked it. I think we're coming back around. Right, because the people that were preaching that are going, "Oh crap, this is really hard," and they're going, and they're like, "I'm not going to do this. I'm out."
I don't spend a whole. Obviously, we run a podcast here, and so you can imagine there's a lot of editing, post production, pre production, emailing, you name it. There's just a lot that goes
Mm-hmm.
into it. And
Sure.
I wrote on Facebook the other day, which I don't spend a whole bunch of time on social media anymore. But I wrote a good way to stop, because that epidemic of how much are you scrolling and too much, right?
Mm-hmm.
A good way to stop scrolling on social media is that's what I wrote, is to start a business in e-commerce or something of the nature. You won't even know what day it is because
Yeah.
you're so inundated with all of this information constantly. Okay, talk about saturation. If you're wanting to jump into podcasts, well, guess what? Everyone podcasts about something, and even still, with that being said, the fact that you can find yourself a niche and a lane is still remarkable. And I think that connects back to the fact that people really want to interact with each other and listen about cool stories and that sort of thing. And so, but even still, it is just astronomically hard. And I heard an individual, and I don't know what her name was, but she was talking about building apps one time. And she was like, oh, they're easy. And I'm like, I was in the process of building an app. And I was so infuriated by her saying this. And of course, it was probably for clout and that sort of thing, but it is not an easy task. And 4C has been around for 15 years now.
The foundation, yes.
The foundation. Okay. How about analytics?
So we're going on, officially a registered business for about a year and a half.
Okay.
I've been doing kind of work for about 3 years. So
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. How man, I want to go a little off script here. How important, because I know we talked about faith a little bit in the beginning, and I'm a man of faith, and so as well.
Yeah.
And how important is your faith to this next chapter in your life?
Ooh.
Yeah, it's massive. Just part of that. I think that's where wanting to approach it with character and trust and commitment comes from, and being a steward of just like the Bible tells us to be a steward of our resources, to also be that with a business too, and to sort of think of almost think of business finances from a biblical perspective, even though I may not do that directly with clients, but just kind of it's saving and investing and all that fun stuff, and being in a good, healthy position, kind of on sort of an operational standpoint, but then, like I said, just approaching it with a good heart, I guess I would say in general, and one, because I want to live my life as a man of character and as someone of someone who's trustworthy, and I think that's just as important, if that's important in my personal life, because of what I believe in, and because of my faith, and I think it should also be just as important in my business life, and also I think just my faith has been what kind of got me through, going through that with my brother, and then also my mom was dealing with some breast cancer at the same time too, and so we were kind of hit with a lot at a really young age, and so there were sort of a couple different directions, and this sort of relates back to business today too. There's a couple different directions you can go when something like that happens, right? Well, you can say, either I don't believe in God anymore, or he hates me, or whatever, or you can say, okay, what is the purpose of this, and why did this happen, and through the foundation and through some different events and through money we've raised in the past, or I've seen the purpose of it, and being able to tell my brother's story and things like that. And so kind of in the same way with business, when something bad happens, how are you going to approach it? Like if you run into maybe you lose something as simple as losing, maybe we lose cash for the month or whatever, or we're in a tough spot, or maybe we're kind of on a road to bankruptcy or something worse. How are you going to kind of sit back and say, okay, this sucks, I'm done for, or are you going to kind of hit it head on and say, okay, what can we do to learn from it, or what's the purpose of it? And so I don't exactly remember the question, but that's kind of how I think, yeah, my faith sort of grew, and how it's kind of shaped my response to difficult situations, and then kind of how I can kind of keep an easygoing attitude that hopefully provides some comfort, but also some strategic and good direction, just using experience and the tools that we can build. And so
Awesome.
I think it all kind of culminates and relates
Absolutely.
sort of in that way, like in just your general attitude to life, I think,
Mm-hmm.
So
It is. It's intertwined very much so.
Yeah.
In a way that's hard to describe to a huge group of people who feel the opposite way. It's something you really truly have to experience for yourself. And you're right, within business, it makes a pretty substantial difference, just like it does in regular life. Like you said, there's always the whys, the why me, and that sort of thing that comes from hardship and challenge and tribulation, and maybe just not getting what you think you deserve or what you wanted. And that's usually the way that God moves too, is in a way that you ask for it one way and you get it another. And you have to learn to be okay with that. And business will offer that to you really often. Okay,
Sure.
I really want to be a misconnection app, just like, and I bring this up every now and then, but Tinder, one of the founders of Tinder, was trying to create a misconnection app. Tinder's not a misconnection app anymore. Obviously, it went a different direction, right?
Yeah.
And I hate that I'm pairing Tinder into we're talking about God here, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's you can really easily want to go one way, and he pulls you and brings you back another. But that ends up encompassing the things that you originally wanted to, and just in a way that you actually needed them versus wanted them. And so that's huge. That's impactful. I can speak for both myself and Michael as men of faith that those are the stories that we're hungry for the most.
Absolutely.
We are in the space of gathering expertise and insights for businesses, but they're one and the same. It can work the same way. And so when we capture stories like that and how it affects multiple industries or outside of ours, it's always encouraging to hear that. And I hope that our audience kind of feels that same way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think this is a good question. I don't know if it's relevant, considering your industry. How big of a role does AI and technology play in your world in terms of how you operate, how efficiently you operate, how quickly you're able to do the things that are that can inundate you and that sort of thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's huge, especially in my position, kind of having both a full-time and building a business on the side going. Just the efficiency, even in sort of, even if it's something as saying, hey, draft me an email for this, or kind of something as small as that. And I have a screen up of ChatGPT sort of constant throughout my day, where I'm just, maybe it's something for research, or throwing a topic in there and saying, give me some interesting points on this, or maybe throwing some analysis that I've done in there and seeing if it spits out anything else. I think it's huge. It's very helpful. In my mind, I don't at least, and I think I've heard this quite a bit. I mean, I don't necessarily see it replacing human, like you've talked about. People are still hungry for human interaction and things like that. And it's kind of funny. There's actually a few companies out there who are building a fractional CFO business model on basically being a full AI fractional CFO. And
wow.
And it's interesting, but at the same time, I just I think nothing's going to replace that human interaction like we talked about. But
because AI doesn't have faith. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't know what that means.
Yeah.
It's cool that you put it that way. We've talked to quite a few business owners at this point, and some have multi-hundreds of millions in revenue, and others have a few 100,000 revenue and everything in between.
Yeah.
And the consistency that we see when we talk about AI is it's not going to replace people, but it's going to kind of be the assistant to people that they need, right?
Absolutely.
To get rid of the mundane tasking, free up individuals to do their really mission critical activities that they really need to be able to get done. So things like that, which I think is huge.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm thankful for it for sure.
I can imagine, man.
Yeah.
I have a funny question.
Yeah.
Maybe this is funny. Because we're talking human on human and AI, because you're talking about having to screen up with ChatGPT, I do the same thing. When I drive down the road, I don't listen to music or anything. I'm usually in my head. I've got thoughts going on. Or I hit the button on ChatGPT and I just start the list of things that I just ask it, and just really rabbit hole is so impressive. And I'm hungry for that type of information. So I'm having the time of my life. I'm laughing about some things. But I'm curious, going back to human on human interaction, using AI tools to help us in a world where industries are developing so rapidly from a technological standpoint. When you see somebody, I would imagine at this point you could probably determine if somebody's responding to you using something from ChatGPT, correct?
Yeah, probably.
Do you find that there's a shift in your thought process when you see that? Do you feel at all in a way like, oh, this person didn't take the time to write me out a message on their own, or come up with the, whatever it might be? Or do you feel like it's, from your perspective, you shift more in the sense like, oh, hey, I also use this. I understand why you're using it. We're all very busy. Do you feel like there's going to get to a point where people start to reject that versus it feeling like an assistant right now? It'll, if we do continue going more human on human and craving that people will be rejecting that the idea of, I can't believe you just sent me something response off of ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's funny, and that's part of the reason. And I probably wish that this isn't my answer to that question, but that's part of the reason I said that I usually use it to help me draft emails, because usually I'll kind of
personalize it or something.
I'll write it out myself and then paste it in there and then kind of rewrite it myself so it still has the human touch. Because if I do get a message that's very Chat GPT-ish, I wish that my thought was, maybe he's doing exactly what I did, or maybe she's doing exactly what I do, and going back and forth. But kind of my initial thought is, they didn't take the time to write me an email, just because I'm sure, unfortunately, that's probably what most people are using it for.
Absolutely.
And you hear about colleges going back to written tests and things like that and handwriting essays and things like that because of it too. And so, I think that's where my mind actually goes, even though, where it's probably not. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and so maybe in follow-up conversations or something, you can kind of get a better idea of, because you're gonna know, right? Like if you end up working with someone and they maybe did initial correspondence or emails through ChatGPT, you're gonna eventually find out, okay, they're just, they don't actually don't have what
they send you a text one day and you're like, who is this? You don't talk like this. I've read your emails.
Yeah. Or they start doing some actual, and in my space, I guess it's not as big of a deal if they can do the analytical work or the or get the concept. I guess it's not a huge deal, but that is a really good question.
I've always found it comical how quickly, Michael introduced me to ChatGPT, and I think there is like a difference between, and not to put you on blast or anything, but but there is a difference between grabbing it and using it because you've watched all this YouTube on how to integrate all these platforms together to make something as seamless as a drop shipping company or something like that using AI, versus you're jumping on there and you're absorbing as much as possible. I had that question with my director, which was, okay, it looks like what you're talking about. It looks like that. Okay, I didn't take the necessary time. Maybe I didn't go to school to learn this. But if we go in conversation back to YouTube and the things that we learn off of YouTube, then we should be able to do the same thing with ChatGPT.
For sure.
Maybe I don't know what fractional CFO is, but then I jump into ChatGPT and I ask it a million questions, have it jump on the web and pull everything. And within 15, 20 minutes, I know enough to start a conversation. Does that necessarily mean I don't know about fractional CFO? Technically, I do. I just sped that process up, right? I didn't have to go to school for it. So,
yeah, and I think that's a huge pro of that aspect of it. Is a very big pro of
I think that too.
AI. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you see? I think we can kind of jump into some really good ending questions here. I'm curious about the future of 4C. What do you, pardon the pun, what do you foresee for 4C in the future? Do you have an end goal? There's integrity behind how you're interacting with your clients and building the business? Still in that growth aspect of the analytics part of it, is the growth behind that determined or predetermined to boost and always grow the 4C foundation specifically in mind? Or is there an end goal for 4C, not just from a career path, but kind of an achievement that you're looking for in terms of its growth?
Haven't thought too deep into kind of an end goal, I would say. Kind of my goal for it would be, and again, going back to kind of being fortunate to be where I'm at with my full-time role. One of the first things he mentioned when he brought me on full-time was, I don't know what you want to do full-time. One day, maybe you want to open your own firm. And so it was sort of like open to kind of whatever path I see. And I've really found, I love all the work that I do. I enjoy building analytical tools and things like that. And I think all of that can be part of a CFO arrangement. And so that's kind of my end goal, is to have a foundation or a company that maybe has a good base of clients on a CFO arrangement, and maybe I'm able to kind of hire a few people to support and things like that. And so that's kind of where I see my maybe 5 to 10 year goal kind of thing going, and being able to hire some people who are in my space, and because I think there's a lot of people who are kind of in where I was coming out of college and in school, not really sure exactly where they wanted to be, what industry they wanted to be in. And I think the fractional CFO space could be a sweet spot for a lot of people. And so I'd love to be able to support some other people who are kind of looking for that sweet spot too. And then also, like I mentioned, we haven't, my family and I, we haven't really been able to dig into the 4C Foundation itself. And so building a business that allows me to have some more time to dedicate to that is huge. And we're always going to be going to volunteer events and things like that. But I'd love to get back to more of the fundraising that I used to do, and used to do some kind of fundraiser event or two every year, and things like that. And so I definitely think those are feeding into each other in that way, and that's why I kind of named them the same way, and not only from the meaning behind the name and things like that, but I definitely think that's
to give it relevancy, because I'm in the transportation business, and we had this conversation with my VP that we interviewed last week, which was and I've always talked to him about this in the 4 years I've been with my current company, is how do we make this attractive for people to even want to do truck driving? It's not obviously, and I don't want to get political, but it feels like we're just really trying to destroy the trucker every single chance that we get. Pipelines, truckers, etc., kind of the backbone of America. And so how do you make that for the younger generation that, and I brought it up in that interview, that loves to dance on TikTok, to want to jump in a truck and drive a truck, right? And so I'm interested, for our listeners, for the next person who wants to jump into fractional CFO or analytics, just period. What would your recommendation be? Because you had your father, or in some resource standpoint, your father, to kind of get an early interaction with that. But where do you think would you start there at school? Would that be a key component? Do you think it's jumping on a certain resource online and doing your own research there, or would you just recommend they look up their nearest maybe agency and just dive in there? How accepting are those agencies to somebody who's not already pre-educated on analytics, finances?
That's a good question. I think it's, one thing is, and this is easier said than done, of course, is finding a good mentor. Like finding people who aren't afraid of you out developing your role, I guess. And that's what I've had in all my careers. It's someone who wants me to get too good at the job to be there anymore, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And
that's
so
rare.
yeah. And so I think, and I knew I wanted to be in FP&A, and so also that might be something too, is sort of develop a roadmap to get to where you want to go. And I knew I wanted to be in the FP&A world early on, but I knew that I didn't necessarily have, like you said, the background to get there right away. And so I was like, okay, well, what's something that I do have the background for that's sort of in the same space that I can kind of use as a stepping stone? And that was being in the analytics space, but more of an operations perspective. And then, okay, so I have this experience now. What's the next stepping stone? Okay, it's, cost of service studies with utilities and stuff that isn't super exciting, but it helps kind of build more foundation. And then okay, well, now finally I have these skills that I think I can leverage into getting into a FP&A finance role. And so I think developing a roadmap is important, and then finding good mentorship and leadership, whether that's in a full-time company as a regular W-2 employee, or if you're kind of doing freelance kind of gigs too. So again, those are easier said than done, but
that makes sense.
I think it's great. And then, a lot of, I don't know how many firms would look for kind of interns and things like that. And so for maybe the younger crowd, like I think a lot of smaller firms will sometimes be looking for interns and things like that.
Yeah.
So
that's a great resource.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah. Jacob, this has been a pleasure. I personally have learned something new today, which I'm always hungry for that experience, first and foremost.
Absolutely.
Not to say screw our audience, you know what I mean? But me first. I want this knowledge. I want the insider information. No, but pleasure having you. Yeah, it's excellent.
Excellent.
I think I really, like you said, I really had no idea about fractional CFO and what that meant, how that applied, and obviously based upon both of you guys communicating about this and working together in some aspect, is a huge and pivotal point of a company's growth. So I think this is going to be really important for our audience to listen to this, and I want to also redirect them back your direction if you would like to take a moment to plug your website, your LinkedIn, whatever those handles might be. That way,
foundation website, whatever it is.
Any aspiring companies can reach out.
Yeah, so we have our foundation's Facebook page. It's not very updated. I don't know if I could share the link or anything like that.
We'll make
Yeah.
sure that
Okay.
everything's
Okay.
shared
All right. Yeah.
upon release. But
Yeah. And then my LinkedIn would be the best place right now for business contact, which I could get you that link as well.
Awesome.
Website's kind of in development, also working on some kind of service brochures, things like that.
Great.
This is I'm very thankful that it's kind of grown as much as it has, where I haven't had a chance to do stuff like that.
would that just be Jacob Spady at 4C on LinkedIn? Would you actually have a handle for that?
Just Jacob Spady, all one word.
Awesome.
Yep.
Got it.
So
Fantastic.
Perfect.
Thank you.
cool.
Thank you for your time,
thanks
Jacob.
for having me on. It's been a
Awesome.
pleasure.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.